Welcome to the Practice You podcast. My name is Elena Brower. Let's dive into today's conversation regarding life's myriad transitions and how we refine our responses in our relationships, our wellness, our households, our work, and in our practices. You are invited to learn and love and listen with me. Welcome to Practice You. Welcome back to the podcast. I have a new friend with me today. Her name is Jessie Harrold. She is a coach and a doula who has been supporting women through radical life transformations and other rites of passage for more than 15 years. She works one-on-one with women and mothers. She's a facilitator of women's circles, rituals, hosts retreats, nature-based experiences, but she's really here because she wrote an incredible book that touched my heart. It's called Mothership, Reclaiming Motherhood as a Rite of Passage. We have so lost touch with rites of passage in our lives, in our culture. I'm just so happy to be speaking to you today, Jessie. Your book is incredible. We actually share the same publisher as well, Shambhala Publications. I'm excited to dive in. First, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Yes. And second, I want to read Lisa Oliveira's blurb. She's badass. Mothership will help mothers remember themselves whole. Jessie Harrold's loving and intuitive approach is deeply welcoming, reassuring, and so hopeful. It is the book all mothers need. So I'm really happy to have you here. I want to start by saying that the scandal of the loss of rites of passage for us is not to be underestimated. A rite of passage you write on page 16. It's the kind of life change that changes everything. It's a transformation that runs deeper than changes we might experience to the things we do, think, or feel, and right into the very marrow of how we identify ourselves in the world. A rite of passage has the potential to bring us closer to our own sense of who we are and what matters most to us. Far from being solitary endeavors of self-actualization, rites of passage grow us up into mature adults that know and use their gifts to contribute to our community as leaders and elders. So the rite of passage that is motherhood is kind of underestimated, I think, in our culture. We become mothers, we have the baby, we go home, we realize 5 days in that we haven't made the bed or changed our clothes yet. You know, it's like one of those insane shifts of life. You take it further, though, into the 4 elements of nature as the way to transform motherhood into a real rite of passage. And I would love to understand why you've chosen the 4 elements as our map here and how this came about.
Yeah, great question. So when I first started doing this work, I've been a doula for 17 years, supporting mothers through the transition to motherhood. And, I got really curious about what happened after that sort of 4th trimester, that first 3 months postpartum that we have been doing more thinking and talking about, that sort of intense time of emotional and physical healing and transformation. I was really curious about what happened after that. And when I first started, having these questions and supporting mothers through this experience, I assumed that there must be something out there, some kind of a roadmap, a guide, something that I could use to support the mothers I was walking alongside during this time. And I found, shockingly, despite the fact that we've been becoming mothers since the actual dawn of humanity, very little has been explored or researched in our, Western modern culture about what happens to a mother, to her identity, to who she is and how she moves through the world through this process of motherhood. And so I decided to create a sort of guideline, a map myself. And so it's called the 4 elements of radical transformation. It uses the elements of earth, water, air, and fire I kind of liken these to trail markers. If I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes when I go hiking, I feel a little lost sometimes, and I
A
feel like
lot of
maybe
times, actually.
yeah. And it just seems to be that anytime I feel like, maybe I better like haul out the GPS and figure out where I am, I'll look up and I'll see a trail marker. And there's just this relief that washes over me. Like, that kind of says, you're on the way, you've come down this trail so far and you're not there yet, but you're headed in the right direction. And that's sort of what I hope that the four elements do during this rite of passage into motherhood, which I posit takes 2 to 3 years to traverse, actually. These elements can act as trail markers to kind of give us a sense of what we might expect along this journey. What is the kind of emotional and spiritual work of, these phases that we might move through as we come into that integrated identity of mother.
So beautiful. I really love mapping things and defining things and categorizing. That feels really good for my nervous system. And in your map here, the four elements, the first phase is earth. And you write, I liken it to putting your feet on the earth of your life and getting grounded with what is, like an orientation to your lived reality. When I teach and mentor women in the postpartum period, I do this by inviting mothers to take an inventory of all the shifts that have happened since they've begun the transition to motherhood, which ostensibly includes like the moment of falling pregnant and all the things that lead up to actual childbirth. You go on to say it's a way of taking stock so you can begin to make meaning of the transformation that's happening in your life. I wish that I had had this book when I gave birth, because I had a postpartum doula who came like twice. She was amazing, and she brought some food one time, and the other time she helped me get the kid to latch on. And after that, I was kind of on my own. I handled it, and I did it. And I knew at least to up my intake of essential fatty acids when I was feeling low, mood-wise. But I really kind of weathered the storm on my own with some help from friends and some affirmations from friends who were having babies around the same time. Had I had this, though, had I taken a moment to put my feet on the ground of my life, I think I would have been a little more, even more present and more awake to what was happening than I was. And not to look back with any sort of regret, but I'm just really glad to be sharing this right now with new moms, because this is everything. Like that one moment of hey, okay, everything's here. It's okay that you didn't make the bed. It's okay that you're putting the kid into the little bouncy seat so that you can take the first shower in 4 days. Like all of this is okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate this orientation.
Yeah, we have this rhetoric in our culture that motherhood actually shouldn't change you, that you should bounce back after having a baby, that actually the worst thing that you could do would be to lose yourself in motherhood. And yet, all of us who've been through this know that that's kind of what happens, right? The entire ecosystem of your life, from your relationship with your body to maybe the way you think about your career to your intimate partnership, if you have one, your values, so many things shift and change. And I think a lot of mothers then, compare that experience to this rhetoric about not changing in motherhood and think that they've done something wrong or that they're broken in some way. And I like to say to the mothers that I work with, you're not broken, you're becoming. And yeah, it's interesting. We use the word matrescence actually to kind of define this 2 to 3 year transition into motherhood. And matrescence sounds like adolescence for a reason, because we go through similar kind of world rocking changes, and it takes a while. We kind of all agree that that's what happens in adolescence. It takes a while and it's kind of uncomfortable, right? It's a little awkward. And we can give ourselves the same grace in the transition to motherhood that we give our awkward teenagers. And we'd never expect a teenager to bounce back. We would think that that was a negative thing if our teenager or our young adult started acting like a child again, right? We expect that in the transition to kind of adulthood, that it's hard and it takes time, but as an outcome of that, you become more yourself. You become more aware of your gifts in the world. You have a sense of maturity. And, the same is true of this process of matrescence. And yet, when we tell mothers, don't change in motherhood, don't let it have its way with you in that kind of way, we're actually limiting who we can become in this experience.
That's such a good way to talk about it, because I too was in that haze and fog and misconception, thinking that let's just keep going. Now there's a kid, whatever. Like, here we go. And I've talked some about this, but, recently it became apparent to me that from 0 to 13, as good of a mother as I was, and as great of a mother as I know I am now, from 0 to 13, we lived in New York before moving out west. And I was raising him. I was putting him to bed most nights, but a lot of afternoons he was raised by the sitter because I was working. I was in my 40s. This was my time. And I've talked about this before. I don't necessarily have regrets, but I do have like a little bit of sadness that I feel when I think about it, because my need for connection wasn't being met at that time. And I didn't even realize that I needed it because I didn't have this map, And when I read this book, I had so many tears because I realized how true this is and how I'm very committed to making sure that it gets in the hands of as many moms as possible.
Thank you. Yeah, I hear this from a lot of people who read it even after they've long passed this kind of early stage of matrescence. And there's sort of like a backwards healing, like that we can kind of go back in time and look at those experiences of early motherhood and realize, not broken, becoming, right? Yeah, there's a lot of healing there.
Thank you. The next phase of the 4 elements model is water. And in this phase, there's a sense of grief that many mothers feel but can't articulate. I'm on page 19. In any life transition, we must let go of what is no longer. This is the hardest thing ever. It's watery work indeed, often marked by lots of tears, washing away of what you're letting go. When I read this, I was reading this as my kid is home for the summer between his first and second year of college. I've let him go. And yet, I still have to keep letting him go again and again and again. It's unbelievable. Every day, several times a day, he'll come in and be like, hey, bye. And I'll be like, wait, whoa, can I get a hug? Anything. And he'll be like, no, gotta go. And it's that song talks about the seasons. They go round and round, Joni Mitchell. And then there's a Cat Stevens song also. It's just so exactly true and human that he is not interested in connecting right now. And this is when I am. Mm-hmm. He was interested in connecting then when I couldn't. And it breaks my heart. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit.
Yeah. The thing that I hope the most with this book and with all of the work that I do is that actually this 4 elements framework, which I actually use for all of the women that I work with, whether they're going through matrescence or job change or diagnosis or perimenopause, you name it. And this framework, what I hope, my kind of highest hope, is that it offers us what I call transformation literacy. And it's this, we can use as a roadmap and these skills and capacities that we can build along the way. Grief and tending to our grief is a skill that, then we can weather the changes that happen subsequent to that transformation into motherhood with a little bit more ease. We know, okay, when I'm feeling this grief, that's normal. And here's how I like to move through grief. And maybe there's some resources and supports that you can draw on. That's my highest hope, because I feel like, our world is changing rapidly and there's a lot to grieve. And so, let us have the skills and resources to move through all of the changes that we will go through over these years.
Yeah. It's funny, even in these funny little tiny moments of the summer when he's home and he comes and goes pretty fast because he's going to work and hang out with his friends, to just afford myself the luxury, which is not really a luxury, of feeling the sadness, the watery sadness of having to practice letting him go day after day, week after week during these warmer months is a gift to me. And you've put words to it in a way that helps me on a daily basis in this season. So just thank you so much for this. The next phase that we enter is the element of air, the space of liminality or in between. So many women saying, I don't know what's next. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know who I am. And that happens, of course, if you're listening, dear listener, and you're at the sort of end of your child rearing vocation. Your kid is maybe in high school, or even you're looking down the road, kids in junior high, and you're thinking, oh my God, when this kid is out of the house or these children are out of the house, who am I in all this? That's very much the air element. Am I still a mother? Am I still, even though I'm not doing these things every single day, making lunches and, organizing things, who am I in all this? This is where I think my Zen studentship has come in. The tradition in which I was introduced to Zen espouses the 3 tenets that were founded by Roshi Bernie Glassman, also the founder of Zen Peacemakers Order and Greyston Bakery, and so many other incredible entities and opportunities to study and practice. But the 3 tenets, the first one is not knowing. So I am now going to practice. I was literally introduced to Zen while my kid was in high school. Thank all the gods. I'm going to practice having no idea as my practice. I have no idea what's meant to happen next, what I am, who I am, and that is intended to be a daily practice. And that is very much the element of air. I would love to hear how you have sort of embodied this and brought it forth in your own experience.
Yeah. It's so uncomfortable, isn't it? So within the kind of construct of matrescence, I think of air as being, it's this liminal space, this betwixt and between. Maybe you're not a mother, you have a baby in your house maybe now, but you haven't fully stepped into and integrated that identity of mother. And it's a tricky time for so many reasons. I mean, first of all, our culture really likes us to have goals and a strong sense of self and identity and a direction, and hopefully it's upward and forward. And the liminal space feels like the opposite of all of that. I use air as the element because people throw their hands up in the air and they say everything is up in the air. And I think you're right that we have to practice this, because being in the unknown it can be dangerous. I mean, in traditional cultures, when you were in the liminal space, it was a place outside of belonging, and we can maybe think of that in terms of motherhood. You're no longer this non-mother or mother of one, for example, but you don't yet belong to this cadre of mothers or mothers of multiple children yet. And, a place of unbelonging is a dangerous place. And traditional cultures would do ritual to kind of mitigate that danger. It can be a dangerous place for new mothers who don't know what they believe, what their values are around mothering. And we can kind of latch on to anything that feels sure, anything that feels grounding and certain. And so we can end up following ideologies and, communities or things that aren't right for us, in this kind of discomfort trying to get out of this unknown. But there's so much potential here. This is a time where often creativity comes online. Creativity in motherhood is the most beautiful paradox, because it's, you never have less time or capacity, and yet so many mothers find that their creativity just goes wild in this time. This is a time for intuition to come online. And, these are precisely the things that mothers and others need to be able to move into the kind of what's next of a rite of passage, is that ability to create your own future and to intuit, to know who you are within that and to know what's right for you each step along the way. So lots of potential here, but my goodness, it's crunchy. It's not fun.
It's so uncomfortable. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can claim a kid who's like pretty happy in this life and pretty chill and has great friends and thinks I'm okay, and still it feels like a fire all the time. Speaking of fire, the final element is fire. You write, this is where the spark of the new life that awaits you begins to ignite and gather strength. It's a time of exploration, discovering who you are now that you're a mother and who you are as a woman who happens to be a mother. And I would even deign to say, if you're reading this after the fact, who you are now that you are back and your kid or kids are gone. The fire element is when you get to experiment with what feels good and true for you now. N-O-W. I love this. There's a whole version of normal that was for 17 years that is suddenly not anymore. So I am creating a new normal every single day since he's gone. He left, just under a year ago. And creating that new normal feels like a crucible. It's so well wrought the way that you've created this for us. I really appreciate it, Jessie. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the fire is often the time that people want to skip to because there is a sense of, exploring what's next. And there can be some creativity and playfulness and curiosity there. And, what I advise people in this time, often when we kind of have this sense of newness, of stepping into the new, we do like that New Year's Eve type behavior. We set some goals and we start heading in a direction. And because matrescence or any kind of real rite of passage is a developmental process, we are growing and growing up through the process. The kind of your now self can't really set goals or intentions for your future self because you're going to be different by the time you get there. And that goal will no longer be salient. And so my advice to people in this time is to use that intuition and use that creativity that's hopefully come online in this process and start to kind of follow the breadcrumb trails of trying things on, experimenting. How is this now? Does this feel good to me? Does this feel like me? And if so, okay, next step, more of this, please. If not, okay, let's try a different step. And I find this process, it's emergent and it's organic. And I find that what's meant for you in this process has this sort of gravitational pull on you, that you begin to gravitate towards that fuller expression of yourself in this time.
The use of the word gravitation, my gosh, I am feeling that draw toward a much deeper life, a deeper inner life, now that he's out of the house, here for the summers, but out of the house. And I appreciate the use of that word because I'm no longer being like gravitationally magnetized toward other things or people. It's really toward myself. It's so sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's so sweet. And there are still these other pulls. Like I, of course, am in other projects and things that are drawing on my time. And I am so ready to not be doing that anymore. It's so fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh. I want to talk a little bit about, I'm on page 63 now, the birth of a mother. It's so beautiful. If you are young, giving birth, about to have a kid, if you're part of the perceptive parenting course where this is also going to show up, this conversation, and you are just sort of looking for some kind of buoy in the early stages of motherhood, page 63 is a beautiful new song by a local artist that Jessie found when she was an early mom. And it goes like this. You've got to hold on. It goes so fast. Those early days, they don't last. Got to enjoy them. They go so fast. The baby days, they don't last. And I just started weeping, going through my computer and looking at all the treasures that I saved in 2 little folders of my little person, his little boys, and singing. And like, oh God, that just happened so quickly, Jessie. Gosh, it brings a tear to my eye. Truly. Thank you for calling it out. Thank you for making it part of the conversation. Like, people say it all the time. It goes so quickly, but like, you don't realize it until it happens, you know?
Yeah. What do they say? The days are long, but the years are short, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the end of each chapter, you have a really beautiful list of rituals and resting and tending and, you know, what to do with the burgeoning understandings from each of these elements as we map them onto our lives. And I wonder, are there any rituals that you can point to in this book that really made a difference in your life, that really stand out as something you have fun talking about as you share this work with other people?
Absolutely. Yeah. The one that's popping into my mind is one that I started when my son, who's now 10, was about 15 months old, and I still do it. So it's a good one. You know, he was my second child, was looking after a toddler, had this little person. You know, my self-care was non-existent essentially, and I was starting to feel really stretched thin. You know, like it was, as you were alluding to earlier, like hard to even just have a shower. And I realized that, okay, I needed to do something, but it didn't feel possible, you know, to have a bubble bath or to like go get a pedicure or something like that. And so I don't know, this ritual just kind of came together or became a ritual over time. I recognized that hydrating myself was probably a doable and worthy goal when it came to my self-care at this point in my life. So I started drinking more water. And what I started to do was, as I took a sip of water, I would say to myself, this is self-care. This is nourishment. And it created meaning out of this, what would otherwise be maybe a fairly mindless moment of just, you know, gulping back some water. And it meant that I had remembered myself in that moment and remembered just a very basic primal need to get enough water into my body. And what was fascinating about that is that with time, it truly did feel as nourishing as, you know, maybe some of the other types of self-care that are often marketed to mothers. You know, you should go do all of these things to look after yourself. And it's hard. And I would go and grab my glass of water when I was feeling overwhelmed and, you know, drink that water. It had a bit of a Pavlovian effect. And I still do that. I still take this moment and pause and notice that I'm meeting my own need today. I'm meeting my own need in this moment. And I think oftentimes in motherhood, you know, especially in those early years, yeah, the pedicures, the bubble bath, they're not going to be necessarily an accessible form of self-care on a regular basis for a lot of us. And what it's all about are these kind of micro moments, these micro rituals where you remember yourself. Yeah, that one's still a really important one for me.
It's very beautiful to think that something as simple as a sip of water could actually be a little ritual for us, but it is. And I really thank you for that. Of the elements, which one is most relevant for you in this season of your life?
Oh,
your kid is 10?
Yeah.
Do you have another? You have 2 kids, right?
I do. Yeah, I have a 13-year-old.
So 10 and 13.
Yeah, it's water, my friend. It is water.
Dude.
You know, yeah. My eldest child, my 13-year-old, is going through some really intense medical stuff and has been for the last couple of years. And, you know, later this year, she'll be going through a life-changing surgery. And it's terrifying. And I wish every day that we weren't walking down this path, you know? And having a grief practice, there's a trail I walk that's kind of like my grief trail. And I go and I just cry and I cry and I cry. And the chickadees listen to me and the herons fly overhead. And I sometimes sing and I pray. And that's my grief practice. And I recognize that I'll never not have grief about this particular journey of motherhood that I'm on. And so I do my best to keep it moving so that I can keep moving.
Is this anything you are able to discuss, or is that as much as you can say?
I think that's probably as much as I can say. You know, it's funny, like after so many years of writing and talking about my own motherhood as a way to process it, now that I have a teenager, I don't have that ability to do that. And I've talked to a lot of other people who found camaraderie in social media or, other kind of places where they were able to process their mothering experiences, and then realizing that once we have teenagers, I think it's a little bit different. And so, yeah, that's probably all I can say about that right now. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm sending you, I hope you can feel it from my heart to your heart, some empathy and some strength today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Is there anything in mothership that we haven't covered, Jessie? Anything that you would like to talk about? I know there's a whole section on ritual that I wanted to drop in with, page 160 for our listener. Really beautiful. You talk about ritual as a skill. Can you talk about this? And then anything else that you feel is important to not miss in this conversation?
Yeah, totally. Well, the thing that I'd love to sort of highlight, that whole sort of second half of the book, is about what I call the mother powers. And the mother powers are these skills and capacities that we have the potential to develop and cultivate and unlock in our mothering. And they're not just kind of things that help us through these experiences, but they're also what our world really needs right now. And so we're kind of poised to not only move through matrescence or other mothering experiences with more ease, but actually become leaders in a culture that I think has become so difficult for mothers and so many others to thrive in. And ritual is one of those mother powers, one of those skills and capacities. And, some of the mother powers are ones that kind of get handed to us on a bit of a silver platter, like self-care, self-tending, as I was talking about earlier, is something that we kind of have to figure that out, because if we don't, we're going to burn out. We're not going to last, right? And it forces our hand. We have to learn how to do this. Ritual is one that I think we have the potential to cultivate in mothering. And I think that it helps us so much. As I talked about, ritual is one of the things that supports us so deeply through the liminal space, and also supports us through that watery grief phase. It gives us something grounding to hold on to when everything feels pretty disorienting. And it is a skill, I think that we've lost kind of the skill of ritual. A lot of us, what we experience in terms of ritual are sort of these like societally prescribed, Pinterest inspired events or occasions or moments that actually have lost a lot of their meaning. And so, the skill of getting clear on an intention for a ritual and how one might sort of actualize that intention or, represent that intention with action is really important and powerful. And yeah, so I talk about that in the book, give people a little bit of a how-to on how to create a ritual that feels meaningful and potent.
Thank you so much for that.
Mm-hmm.
Truly. Jessie Harrold, you've given a gift to the world with this book. It's called Mothership. You can find, Jessie has also some courses. I would love for you to talk about the courses and where we can find you in order to study with you, learn more with you, or read the book.
Yeah. So Mothership, the book, actually came out of a program that I've been teaching for over a decade now, also called Mothership. And Mothership is a 3-month matrescence support program for new mothers. And that actually is enrolling right now and begins in September. And I also have a program called The Village, which is a 6-month matrescence apprenticeship program for perinatal professionals, anyone who's working with new mothers or wants to work with new mothers, and really supporting them to understand this process of matrescence so that they can grow more confidence and skill in supporting the mothers in their practices through this. And that also is enrolling now and begins in September. And you can find me on my website, which is jessieharrold.com. And I'm usually also on Instagram. That's where I hang out in terms of social media. And people can find Mothershift wherever books are sold. And I will say that Mothershift also is an audiobook, because I don't know too many mothers who can stay awake to read an entire book. So
Is that not the truth? But we do drive and we do walk and run.
Exactly. This book is getting listened to on those drive naps or those long walks around the neighborhood.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today and sharing with us. And I think it's important to point out it's actually for mothers to be, and those supporting mothers, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the blurb sounds like this. For mothers to be, and those supporting mothers on matrescence as transformation, offering the 4 elements model as a map for the rite of passage that is motherhood.
Beautiful. Perfect.
That's perfect, right?
That's great. Yeah.
I'm just happy to make sure that also the doulas and the support systems are aware of this work.
Exactly.
My hands are folded together. Thank you so much, Jessie.
Thank you so much, Alina. I really appreciate your time. Your great questions. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Same. And all the best with this book, truly.
Thank you. And the same with yours.
Thank you so much.
I hope it goes smoothly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you ever want me to come and talk to the moms about holding nothing, I would be happy to do that.
That sounds really great. I will definitely. Yeah, well, why don't I talk to Yeshe and maybe we'll set something up.
Oh, fun. Yes, of course.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you again so much, Jessie. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.